Alright, so today we're going to be swapping out the shells and buttons on our Nintendo Switch Pro Controller. Now I know the Switch 2 Pro Controller just came out, but I figured this would be a good time to go back and add some new life into our old Gen 1 Pro Controller. I never got a chance to swap these out before, and according to iFixit, the new controllers aren't nearly as easy to get into anyways. I've been craving some nostalgia recently, so I thought it would be fun to test out the GameCube variant from Extreme Rate. When I ordered these, I thought I selected the octagonal version that most closely resembles that original GameCube controller, but it turns out there are two different options, so be careful when you're making your selection. The kit does come with most of what you'll need. However, I've heard these screwdrivers that Extreme Rate includes sometimes strip the screws in these devices, so you might want to check out the Fetching Tech branded tools that I offer, or something like the toolkit from iFixit. Speaking of tools, here's what we'll need. A Phillips 00 screwdriver. iFixit and Extreme Rate recommend a Phillips #1 screwdriver also for some of the internal screws, but you can get by with just the 00 if you don't feel like buying both. We'll also need a set of tweezers, an opening pick, a spudger, your controller, and a new set of shells and buttons. We'll start with our 00 screwdriver and take out these two screws that hold on the grips. Then the hand grips should slide right off, revealing 4 more screws for us to remove with that same driver. Next, we might need the opening pick or spudger to get the back cover off that's housing the battery. There's a small lip on the left side of the battery that we can use to remove it. Then there are 5 more screws that we need to remove. And from here on is where iFixit recommends using the #1 driver instead. However, the iFixit kit that I use is unfortunately too wide to reach 2 of the screws that are below the battery, so keep that in mind if you're planning on using one of these screwdrivers with swappable heads. With those 5 screws out of the way, we can pry apart the 2 halves using our opening pick, but be careful not to force them apart, as there's a small ribbon cable connecting them that we don't want to damage. You may have to work the joysticks around a bit while you separate the shells. Grabbing our spudger, we can flip up the lock that's on this ribbon cable and pull it out of the connector, and then we can separate the 2 halves. Focusing on the buttons first, we need to disconnect another ribbon cable for the shoulder buttons by unlocking the connector with our spudger and gently pulling on the ribbon cable with our tweezers. And then there are 2 screws which hold the shoulder button housing in place, which we can remove. Once those are out, the shoulder button housing can be removed. Next, there are 2 screws holding the board for the buttons in place. With those out of the way, the board can be set aside, and we can collect all the membranes holding the face buttons in place. Now, switching over to the new shell, we can place in our new face buttons and reinstall those membranes as well. This being the GameCube version, there's quite a variety of colored buttons to choose from, and the home button will require a piece from the original controller. Then we can reinstall the board and the 2 #1 screws holding it in place. Remember when screwing these in that it's just plastic they're screwing into? and they weren't really meant to be reinstalled over and over, so be careful not to twist with too much force or the plastic might strip. Just get them snug enough. It's a good idea to test out the buttons to make sure they all actuate as intended. Before reinstalling the shoulder button housing, we can replace the shoulder buttons as well. The GameCube only had 3 shoulder buttons, and Extreme Rate suggests using a gray one for the L button that didn't exist before, but I went with blue. I think it looks a little nicer. The L and R buttons are pretty straightforward. There's a little lip on the bottom, and then they pop into place towards the center of the housing. We just have to lift up and away from the housing and then swing towards the center and they should pop right out. For the ZL and ZR buttons, there's a metal rod that slides through the housing and the buttons. We need to grab our spudger and tweezers to work the metal rod out towards the center of the housing. Then the buttons should come right out. Putting the new shoulder button back in, we have to hold it in place and slide the metal rod back through the housing and through the button with the spudger. Then we can reinstall the L and R buttons by sliding the lip into the housing and popping the center portion in place. Once they're all back in place, we can test them out as well. Now we can grab our front shell and reinstall the shoulder housing and the 2 number 1 screws holding it in place. Then with the tweezers, we can slide the ribbon cable back into the connector and lock it with the spudger. Going back to the rear housing, we can pull off the joysticks and replace them with our new joysticks. Be sure to line up the new joysticks correctly as the connector is kind of oblong in shape. Then we can line up the rear housing with the front shell so that we can reinstall the ribbon cable. This part is kind of tricky. With the help of our tweezers, we can reattach the ribbon cable connecting the 2 boards and lock that connector down. Once that's attached, we can reseat the rear shell into the front shell. And reinstall the 5 number 1 screws from before. Now our battery can go back in place, lining the battery connectors up with the pins in the housing. Then we can grab our new backplate and snap it into place and reinstall the 4 00 screws that hold it down. Our new hand grips should slide right over the handles, and then we can reinstall the last 2 00 screws holding them in place. And that's it, we have a brand new looking Switch Pro controller. I wish the Extreme Rate kit included this middle shell so it would match the rest of the controller, but at least it saves us some headache switching everything else over. If you're interested in performing this swap yourself and you'd like a cheap set of tools, please check out the Fetching Tech website and Etsy shop. And if you'd rather purchase a controller already completed, or you would like to send yours in for me to perform the swap for you, those options are available as well. If you have any questions or suggestions for the next swap you'd like to see, let me know down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.